a nice easy start for this evening. Um, your choice of sitting on a block, sitting on a bolster, sitting on the floor. We're going to be here for about 4 minutes, kind of get ourselves into that Zen feeling for our class this evening. And as ever, you want to make sure that you feel comfortable in the posture. There's no sharp pains. Some of these long-held postures do become quite strong. So work within your own boundaries, looking after yourself, and then we should be okay. As simple as that. Always work on the theory: if it hurts, don't do it. It's about as sound advice as I can give. We'll sit up nice and tall. I'm quite happy for my body to have heel-to-heel alignment, so my knees are down low, shins are on the floor, and that gives you a much bigger foundation to purchase on, and it makes it a little easier to sit upright. But if you are an ankle crosser, that's okay. It just means that your knees will always be a little bit higher than mine, and you might find sitting on your sitting bones and getting your spine upright a little bit more of a challenge. But as with everything, the more you practice, the more familiar it feels. So even if your body shape looks different to mine, it's going to be your normal, and then you're able to relax. So that's what we're looking for, really. Closing the eyes optionally, slowing the breath down. And perhaps for the first time today, just recognizing how you actually feel. We'll take the next exhalation and allow ourselves to just roll the shoulders around a couple of times, nice and gently, each way, if possible. And then we'll untangle the legs, and we're going to come down into our bellies into Sphinx pose. So just easing yourself down, moving your props around as you need to. Come down onto the elbows. I have them about shoulder distance apart. Try not to have your elbows behind your shoulders. You want a little ahead, if anything. And then, because it's a yin practice, we're going to get very soft in the belly and the lower back and the thighs and the hamstrings. And we'll actually let the shoulders round a little bit up towards the sky as your chest drops into this void that you've made. Head position really of choice. Some people like to drop, some people like to hold. Whatever feels easiest on your neck and your lower back. And you can close your eyes if you wish. if you did drop your head, then now would be a time to start lifting, lengthening the back of the neck out a little bit so we don't move abruptly. And I'm going to begin to bring the feet together. So the toes touch at the back of the mat, and then come down onto the chin, elbows out wide. They will probably soften through the shoulders once you've been here for a while. We're going to take the right knee out to the side, 90 degrees-ish, and then swing the shin bone away so it follows the line of the mat, so the toes pointing out. You can turn the head a little to the right as well. And we're going to be here for about 3 minutes altogether. So plenty of time to drop into the pose. Now I tend to enjoy letting my chin sit on top of the back of my hands. Other people might prefer to have their forehead underneath the hands and the hands a little further forwards. Again, it is really about personal preferences and how it feels. What we're trying to do is hopefully get to a point where we can relax and let the groins and the hip open. So very much working into the joints. Breathe a little bit deeper into the ribs. And then I'm going to slide the foot back along the ground, down the center. Have a little wiggle out through the hips. Just a couple of breaths. Now I want to come back up to sitting, and I want to be sitting on the heels. So we'll roll to whichever side you like to roll to, and we'll draw the knees in towards us. So we'll lift up very carefully, looking after the spine and nervous system. And then we're going to come into saddle pose. The saddle pose traditionally would be with the knees together and the feet wider than the hips. So you sink into the space that you've made. But for many of us, Westerners, that's not that comfortable. It is if you're about 2 or 3 years old, apparently, but you can probably tell I'm a little bit more than that. So sitting on a block, and if you need to, blocks and bricks, and just making the height right for you so it doesn't feel like your knees are going to explode, but they are feeling like they're getting a stretch and a bit of an opening. It does take a minute or so for the calf muscles to ease off, and that will affect how your knees feel. So you could always come in, settle for a minute, and then let yourself drop a little deeper afterwards. We're not holding this for an enormous amount of time, but we will be coming back to this posture later on this evening. I'm going to let myself lift up from that, just using the fingers to press into the floor either side of me, just opening out carefully. I'm going to move the props that I've used out to the side and then take a little stretch out with each leg. Say hello to the back and the knees again. And then coming in for a second bite of the cherry with the knees. I'm going to take them out nice and wide. Use as much of the mat as possible, toes together, and we'll sit down into child's pose. So again, your choice where you want to place the hands, and if you want to use props either under your legs or under your head. About another minute or so. And let the belly relax, the shoulders, gravity doing everything else for the legs, hips, knees, and ankles. Again, we'll start to breathe a little deeper. Respiration with movements. Once you use the hands under the body, lift our way back up. We're going to stretch the legs out again. And then I'm going to come back down on the belly. We're going to take Sphinx pose for a second time. Now, if you feel happy to take the hands forwards and lift the elbows away from the ground into seal pose and actually walk the hands in, so the shoulders are pushed back a little bit. If that feels comfortable, then you can hold that. You might try it for a bit and go, actually, I can start to feel a bit more compression in my lower back than I was expecting. I'll move out. So you just bring the elbows back down and move into Sphinx pose. It is quite strong. I find myself that if I have the hands a little wider than the shoulders, it's a little easier rather than a narrower position. Another option to come up just a little bit higher would be to use bricks underneath your elbows. So you would get a little bit more lift and space, but wouldn't need to work with the strength in the arms. Sometimes a little bit of stretch, a little bit of pressure can feel quite comforting as long as it's approached sort of slowly and steadily. And let the legs relax as much as you can. Let yourself go deep into that release. And then we'll release down. And hands come once again underneath the chin, the feet just wiggle together. And then I'm going to take the left knee out 90 degrees. So the second half frog, shin bone following the line of the mat, toes out to the side. Again, just allowing yourself to lean into that drop in deep. And this is very much one of those poses where you can see differences in the body from side to side. Obviously, when you first come into the posture, you're going to be in a different place anyway, but we've sunk now for about a minute and a half-ish. So the body has released, and you're starting to be able to compare how this feels to the previous side that we worked with. I'll get another minute to sit here. It becomes a game of mind over matter to let things relax that are starting to feel the effects of gravity and body weight. One of the ways we protect ourselves is to hang on tight, keep the muscles tense. So when we feel something that's unfamiliar, the temptation to tighten up, it's kind of automatic, so you have to really concentrate on it. Slide the leg back again. Keep the toes purposely in contact with the floor, so minimize the sort of shock of weight going through the body. Wriggle out through the hips, and again, roll to whichever side you like. I'm going to come back up like we did before. We'll draw the knees in. Ourselves lift up. And then once I'm up, I'm going to have the feet out in front. And you want to be sitting definitely down the front half of the mat for purposes of later on. Soles of the feet together. I'm going to bring the feet in comfortable distance and sit tall. I'm going to be here for about 2 minutes, excluding the time it took to transition from the previous pose, perhaps 1.5 minutes. I'm just trying to let those knees drop open. I kind of started the process already with the previous pose, lying on the ground, opening the hips out. So hopefully there is potential to move. I'm going to come into the full version of butterfly. So I'm going to start to round the spine and let the head drop. But importantly, I want to ease the pelvis back a little bit. So I'm not trying to get a deep forward bend like a seated posture would be in a hatha class. This is more subtle. Just sinking in easily, letting the head drop. And breathing does get a little bit constricted as we're settling into the diaphragm, but do your best. And then we'll begin to just use the arms to lift ourselves back up again. Bring the legs together. Take a little sip of water because that cough doesn't seem to want to go anywhere. Better. And then we're up on our knees again. I'm going to use the friendly block and they're going to use the bolster behind, which may or may not be necessary, but I know in my body it is. We'll just see where you get to. We're going to come into saddle pose, but we're going to take the reclined version. One knee at a time is going to be the effort. So we're going to come up onto all fours and now heading off the end of the mat. I'm going to take my right foot forwards and I'm going to slide the block back so it's kind of underneath my right sitting bone. I use the hands to come back in. You can adjust as you come down. Now, if you want to, you can either keep the knee high or you can extend the leg out. And just as we did before, you want to have your knee sort of coming in towards the center line a little bit on the bent leg with the heel outside. Take a breath from there. And I'm going to start to lean back, which is where the recline part comes in. Now, quite often when I come into this, I find that my pelvis is still sort of pushing forward. So I lift my bottom a little bit because I can take the strain through my thigh and my knee, and then let the pelvis tailbone move forwards a little bit, and then I sink in. I can be in a much more comfortable position. Okay, we want to be very careful with this, try not to overcommit. If you find that your bent knee lifts off the ground, you have gone too far. You should be able to keep that chin bone very much easily on the floor. I would recommend if you're sort of reclined like I am, keeping your chin in towards your chest. It's a little easier for your neck muscles. And some people will be able to get all the way down onto that bolster and then actually turn it lengthways down the mat. And that would feel comfortable. Some people will be able to do it on one leg, not the other, especially if you have a history of injuries to the knees or hip flexors. We will be doing both sides. So begin to draw the belly in on the inhale. Press the elbows down. Bring the hands underneath in a way that allows you to use your arms to push away. And then I'm going to bring the right foot back in. Use the hands either side to lift up back to all fours. So move the block out to the side so that I can stretch out that left leg. And then when it feels like it's come back to life, I'm going to draw that leg through towards the front of the mat. I'm going to take my block, place that down. This is left sitting bone alignment I'm looking for. I'm going to ease my way in, just adjusting carefully. Knee in towards the center, heel to the outside, and bootlace side down, if I didn't mention that before. Shame on me if I didn't. And we'll just lean back when we feel comfortable. So you kind of need your knee to adapt a little bit rather than dumping straight down. Some people can. If you're a little bit tight in the knees, that's not going to be the case. There's a little lift I had before. So I can get the feeling that the pelvis is more sort of following the line of the incline or recline that I'm using. And just breathing, nice and easy. Again, we'll start to lift out of that. So just drawing the left foot in, hands underneath to press away on an exhale. Then hands by the side, lifting myself up. Force, move the block out of the way, stretch out my right leg again. Make sure that feels okie dokie before I move further into postures. I'm going to come down to the floor and just move that block out towards the front of the mat and roll the bolster out of the way a little bit. And I'm going to bring my left heel into the groin. I want the knee chin to be actually on the ground. So that's, again, an opportunity to use the blocks underneath that thigh if your leg is just hanging in the air. Right leg is out, sort of 90-degree split between the legs. I'm going to take a little breath and start to hinge forwards and allow myself to roll down. Now I'm going to try and let this right leg really loosen off as I come forward with the hands. Now, some people will get their elbows to the ground. Some people will get very flat to that. Some people with arms outstretched. Barely looking like they're nodding their head forwards. This is very intense on the hamstring and the sort of the muscles that work on the inner groin and the inner thigh down towards all the way toward the knee. My foot does roll out a little bit. It can be a little uncomfortable under the heel if it's off the mat. So sometimes worth having a blanket rolled up to hands that you can place underneath there. And then again, we're letting the head drop in. Interesting sensations in the leg that's extended out to the side. Yeah, we're going to start to try and breathe a little deeper. So feeling the back of the lungs, the ribs stretching out. I'm going to use the hands to press into the floor and let myself lift back up. I'm going to ease the left leg out. So obviously playing around with the props if you're using any. And then I'm going to come to the second side. Again, you don't have to use the same arrangement on each side. It's about letting yourself be comfortable. When you're ready, just rocking onto those sitting bones. We're going to try and lengthen out directly following the hip and sitting bones, so we're not sort of twisting off to the side. And again, just letting ourselves sink very gently down. And seeing where we get to. I definitely notice in my body that the experience of one side to the other is considerably different. I'm trying to sort of accept our bodies and how they move is one of the benefits of this practice, of become less self-critical, more accepting. We're going to let ourselves come back up out of that. A few extra longer breaths. Ease our way up. And stretch the legs out. Bring your hands underneath if you need to. Bring them back in. You might need to rub the legs a little bit just to bring your legs back to feel like normal legs rather than the fact that you feel like a Spanish chop chicken. And then we're going to let ourselves lie down on the ground. So we're going to push the bolster further back. I'm going to need quite a bit of room over here. I'm going to lie down onto the floor, hit the front end of the mat, and just walk feet in towards to start with. So we're going to come into cat's tail pose, and thinking about which is the easiest way to show this. I'm going to take my hips over towards my left, and then let the legs drift over towards the right. Now, I'm going to keep the shoulders flat to the floor, and I might need to wriggle the hips off the ground a couple of times to take them a little bit further over to the left side so I can get a comfortable position. Now I'm going to take the top leg, which is my left leg, and take that a sort of more 90 degrees to the side of the mat. I'm going to use my hand on top of the leg to give it a little bit more weight. I'm going to have a big toe just sitting down on the floor, so it's close. And then very gently, I'm going to start to walk my right foot out towards the left side as far as I can, with the heel as close into my bum as possible. And I'm going to slide the left hand down without actually looking and see if I can find my foot, which might require you to have a little bit of a lift. But the end result, hopefully, is that we're in a very deep twist, and the bottom leg is following the line of the center line of the mat, as is the spine. And what a bit of luck, 2 shoulder blades on the ground. If you're hovering, that's okay. It's not the end of the world. You can play around a little bit, find a more comfortable position. One of those poses that can take me a little while to get into. Start to bring myself slowly back, so releasing the top leg, releasing the bottom leg, stretch that out gently, then bring yourself back onto hopefully the center line of your mat. Feet in close to your bottom, have a little shake through, make sure you feel happy. And then we're going to take it to the second side. So again, moving the hips over is the first thing that we're going to do. I'll take them to the right this time, legs down to the left. We're going to swoop the top leg a little bit more, sort of 90 degrees out. And then slowly use the toes of the lower leg to walk the foot behind and out to the side edge of the mat. Again, just taking the hand back. Might need a little lift just to find your foot. Ease your way in. A number of the postures in the Yin family require you really to trust your body and to let yourself sit there and let go. There is a sort of learning curve of trust to go through. Obviously, every class you come to in a Yin practice is a new experience for that particular day. And same poses, just in a different sequence, different periods of time, have quite a significant slightly different effect. Let's see what works well for you. I'll start to breathe a little deeper. And begin to release again. It's a nice gentle release. Moving our way back. We want to rock a little bit out through the body. We start bringing my props back in towards me as well. I'm going to come into bridge pose, which we're going to hold for sort of a considerable amount of time. So just, I know roughly the combination I like to use for a long held bridge pose that I want to drop into. So I don't ever want to be at my sort of maximum bridge. I want to be a little bit less than that. And I also want to make sure that whatever way I set my props up, they are going to be stable. When you're ready, you're going to slowly take your feet a little wider than the hips, press down and slowly curl the tailbone away from the floor. Pressing down through the shin bones, we'll lift up enough to bring our blocks, props, bolsters, whatever we're using, underneath the back of the pelvis. So you want to be at the top end of the pelvis rather than the tailbone. But there is a big old chunky bone from your spine into your pelvis, and that's the one we want to be sitting across. So when you're ready, let yourself take your arms out wide. And you do need to, or I would suggest anyway, that you want to take your feet wider than you would in your normal bridge pose. And we want to try to let the knees rock in towards the center. So for each of us, that's going to be different. We're just trying to release the hip flexors in a different way to perhaps we do try in other postures and other practices. And we're going to work very much on the spine here. So this is about trying to let your spine sink towards the ground. Sounds like an easy statement, but again, trust developing in the experience of practicing regularly, allowing you to feel comfortable for your spine to change shape from gravity and body weight. It's a slow pressure that builds into the discs across the joints. So it is safe because of the way we come into it. Try not to make any sudden movements, and ideally keep your head still so your eyes are looking towards the ceiling. I do rock mine around quite a bit, but that's purely because I'm trying to see a clock so that we don't spend the rest of the evening just lying on the mat like this, because it does feel nice. About a full minute left. Try to let those outer thighs relax into the knees, across the lower back, middle section. Feeling severely stressed through the shoulders, and perhaps going to see us on a day when we're doing a hatha practice, and you can get to stretch out a little bit more differently. So coming up for the last few seconds, we'll take a breath in. I'm going to press slowly down into the feet, draw the tummy muscles in, let the glutes sort of clench and engage. Going to lift just enough to move my blocks out to the side. And then take care to lower my spine into the ground. And then when it's flat, we're going to take a little wriggle. See how it feels. Now, sometimes taking your feet out to the corner edge can actually be problematic to your lower back. So if you're not sure, stay with the knees wide, just dropping in towards the center line with the feet out wide and close in towards you. If you're going to take the legs out to the end of the mat, just slide the heels along the ground. I'm going to take my right hand on my belly, below the belly button, and the left on the body just above, arms facing down. And the shoulders sink in. We're going to be here for a few minutes. And slowly start to wriggle the fingers and toes as I breathe a little deeper. I'm a little more aware of my body. I'm going to roll the ankles and the wrists just gently, joining the body up from the top all the way down to the bottom. And then I'm going to stretch out, whatever way feels good. And then finally, if you haven't already, slide one heel along the ground at a time towards us. And let the knees come in towards the body. Going to roll gently from side to side. We're going to roll out to the right side in a moment. So you might need to clear props away on other things. But we'll see if we can take an exhalation to let the legs go fully over to the right side. And then turn the chest over to follow. Bring the hands underneath. So we press away on the exhale with the smallest amount of disruption to our breath and our state of mind. We'll sit up nice and tall. And then bring the hands in towards our heart into prayer. We'll take a longer breath as we close the eyes. Begin to slowly exhale, letting the chin drop. Feeling the belly drawn to the spine, or simply follow the bow to the floor. Feeling a practice for the evening. Inhaling, letting the spine build up with that breath. Letting the head follow, the eyes open. Namaste. Thank you very much for joining me this evening. Hope you enjoyed. Look forward to seeing you all out again soon. Take care.